Hello and welcome to Faith Matters. This is the programme where we look at Merseyside life through the prism of faith, belief and spirituality. And today we're looking at alternative spirituality, and our guest is Jackie O'Carroll from Make Space, who's going to discuss this with us. Quoting from your website, from the Make Space website, Jackie, you say, Make Space is a community of people who are discovering their spiritual selves and are committed to joy and fulfillment in every moment. This is a big vision. So how are you making it a reality? Tell us about it. Tell us about Make Space and how you're achieving this.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, which is really great. Make Space, we launched in March of 2014, but my vision for Make Space came perhaps a couple of years before that, without me knowing really. I knew that I wanted to be part of a community that embraced my journey, my spiritual journey. So rediscovering a lot of things about myself that I'd sort of kind of shelved for a long time, since I was a Christian in my 20s probably.
So you were a Christian once?
Yes, I was a Christian. I was brought up as a evangelical Baptist.
Right,
my father was a Baptist minister. But in my 20s, just shelved that, rejected it completely. And it was only, I don't know, maybe the beginnings of it all was probably about 10 years ago. And then more recently, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, I started to read various books, more around spirituality than Christianity.
Okay.
And particularly around Buddhism, I was very, very interested in. So I was part of going to some meetings and stuff in London, and the guy that I met there suggested that maybe, you know, the answer was to develop a community for myself in Liverpool. And he subsequently mentored me and actually enabled us to launch Make Space. So he came to Liverpool and spoke.
So was he a spiritual teacher of some
He
description?
wouldn't call himself a spiritual teacher, no. He writes books about finding what it is your soul is telling you, you know, to be in this life.
Okay.
As such, his name is Nick Williams. He's a great a great guide and teacher. But I wouldn't say he'd call himself a spiritual teacher.
So you developed this community, and you know, how did that happen, and what do you do?
So I wanted a community that allowed me to be with other people who were on a similar journey. Although obviously it's not the same because we're all on our own journeys, and everyone is on a spiritual journey. But not everybody knows that they're on a spiritual journey. And I wanted to offer a space where people would come together to be able to share some of those things, but also to find some guidance, perhaps some teaching as well. A space where we could meditate together. And that's where we're up to now, really, 18 months down the road. We started off with invited speakers, which I thought was the model that we were going to develop, but actually it hasn't happened that way. We now have regular monthly events. We have the very first thing that we did before we launched Make Space was we set up a reading group in Liverpool called the Soulful Reading Group. And we read a whole range of books and articles, and that has continued. So that's 2 years old now, just this month. And for the last 6 months, we've been reading a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which he's a wonderful teacher who, for many, is the beginnings of their spiritual journey. They read a book of Eckhart Tolle, more often than not, The Power of Now. Many people have tried to read it. It came to me 3 times before I really attempted to read it thoroughly.
Is it a tough read? Or?
No, not particularly, but it's very challenging.
You
know, some of the ideas and principles in the book actually really challenge people. And this book, A New Earth, actually is easier to read, I think, but it's a great guide. There's a lot of stuff about ego, becoming aware of your ego, and then about how do you break free from ego and how do you become who you truly are. and at peace, and be able to love who you really are, which for me is the underpinning of my spirituality.
Well, you've encouraged me to pick that up.
Okay.
You buy that in Waterstones or any normal, well, not,
A New Earth.
A New Earth?
Yes,
Can you get, or,
yeah, you can.
Or,
I bought a number of second-hand copies online.
right, okay.
Yeah, it's readily available.
Okay, so what does it mean to discover one's spiritual self? I mean, that's in your mission statement there. What does that actually mean?
Well, as I said, everyone is on a spiritual journey. Some people use the term awakening or becoming conscious, and for me, that the word awakening, I think, is really helpful, because we are all spiritual beings. It's an element of humanity that gets neglected often, or we think it means religion or a set of beliefs, and for me, that's not the case, and I don't find that particularly helpful, having been there for 20 years. For me, discovering my spiritual self has been really about becoming aware of who I am, becoming aware of what's going on in my head, challenging some of the thoughts that I have, particularly around being judgmental about others or about myself. Beginning to accept and love myself for who I am, regardless of what mistakes that I may make, or what I may think of, or what others may think of me. So love and compassion underpin the whole of my spiritual journey, and I think that's true for many people, that when they begin to become aware of that and accept themselves, then it opens us up. For me, it was an opening of my heart that really transformed my life. That's what I kind of say to people now, that when you can begin to open your heart, and that first of all starts with yourself. You know that thing of when you get on a plane and the crew say, make sure you put on your own oxygen mask first, because obviously if you don't, then you can't breathe and you can't help anybody else. So for me, that's where it begins, that you begin to work on yourself. And that's about love and compassion, first of all, and being kind to yourself. Instead of, we're in a society where we beat ourselves up constantly. We give ourselves a really hard time for everything that we think or do or not do or don't achieve. And actually, it's about letting that go and just saying, you know what, I need to be kind to myself here. I need to love myself more.
So you think that, there are a lot of people perhaps are just not aware of their spirituality or their spiritual potential. And do you
absolutely.
think that relates to the kind of society we live in?
I think there is an element of that, that people seek happiness in things, and they seek happiness outside of themselves. They think they'll find happiness in a relationship or in a career or in money, material things, and it just doesn't work, If you're not happy within yourself and you're not loving yourself, then trying to find that in a relationship is not going to work. And people who make lots of money, I'm not saying they're not happy, obviously, I'm not saying that. But if that is where you are seeking happiness, then you're on pretty rocky ground, in my view.
Okay, achieving joy and fulfillment in every moment. How possible is that?
Okay.
Given what we've just said about the kind of world that we live in. Is that really possible?
Well, I don't know whether achieve is the right word, because achieve sounds like you've got to strive and struggle for it. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Having joy and fulfillment in every moment is about letting go, actually. It's about letting go of all the stuff that stops you from finding joy, because our natural state is one of finding joy and fulfillment. That is our natural state. It's all the stuff and all the layers that we wrap ourselves up in that prevent us from finding that joy and happiness. And some of those are protective layers. You know, we protect ourselves from being hurt again. You know, if people who've been abused will have spent many years protecting themselves so they don't get hurt.
And there's repeated patterns, isn't there?
Absolutely, yeah. So finding that joy and fulfillment is about unwrapping some of that, and that's what I talk about. And I use a kind of image of cling film, you know, that we may have 10 layers of cling film wrapped around us, and finding that joy is about unwrapping some of that. And again, it comes back to opening ourselves up and being vulnerable. You know, we tend to see being vulnerable as a weakness.
Yep.
Whereas actually being vulnerable is a real strength. If we can be vulnerable with others and show others that we're open, that yes, we're fallible, but that we can still love ourselves through that, then it allows other people to express their vulnerability too. And for me, that's absolutely crucial. There's a wonderful book. The very first book we read in the book group was called The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. And she researched this for 10 years. She's a professor of sociology in Texas. And she researched shame and vulnerability. And what she discovered was people who are open about some of their shit, something that they're ashamed of, being open about being vulnerable, these people find happiness and love for themselves. What was interesting was when she did all of that research, she suddenly discovered she was on the wrong side, that she suddenly discovered that she wasn't able to express some of that. She had to change, absolutely. And that's very much what the book is about. It's very powerful.
Okay, well, thanks, Jackie. We're going to go now to our commercial break, and then we're going to come back and talk more about these themes. It's very, very interesting. I'm fascinated.
Thank you.
See you in a few moments. Hello and welcome back to Faith Matters and to our guest in the studio today, Jackie O'Carroll from Make Space. Now, Jackie has, but before we came on air, was giving me lots of recommendations for speakers and so on for Faith Matters. If you as viewers want to ring in with your comments and suggestions for guests who might come on the show, you can do so, or you can email us at faithmatters@baytvliverpool.com. So get in touch and let us know your suggestions. Jackie, as I was listening to you before the break, I was thinking all the way along as you were speaking, you know, there was nothing as a Christian that I disagreed with what you were saying. Yet you were saying right at the beginning that you'd left, at least left institutional Christianity, left your Christian beliefs some time ago. So what's your take on Jesus? Who is Jesus for you? What do you think of Jesus? Because he kind of stood for the kind of principles that you shared, I thought.
Yeah, I'd probably put Jesus on a par with Buddha and other spiritual teachers over history. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to the question, to be honest. I read the Bible in the same way that I would read Buddhist teachings.
So you still read the Bible?
Occasionally, yeah. I have a spiritual teacher who runs our meditation group, actually, who refers to Jesus's teachings alongside other people, you know, many other teachings. And for me, that's the only way forward, because when we look at the history of religion, we look at the history of war. You know, religions are not about peace and love as far as history goes. It's the differences that have caused so many troubles in the world. And so for me, it has to be spirituality, and my own journey has to be something which brings people together and brings people together to share and to love each other. And if a religion isn't able to do that, then it's not working for me. I also find kind of people having a set of beliefs quite restricting. So I'm not interested in going there. I'm not really interested in what people believe, to be perfectly honest.
So not interested in doctrine or
no, not
anything
at
like
all,
that?
not at all. And I'm quite familiar with doctrine. I'm very familiar with the Bible.
Because of your background?
Because that was how I was brought up. And my answer to that now is, you know, pull out what is helpful to you. But most importantly, read what is most helpful to you in living your life every day, every moment, whatever that is, that helps you to love yourself and to love others. and to open your heart to others so that you're not judgmental, so that you're full of kindness and compassion. If that means, you know, somebody who's a Christian is saying, oh, well, that's what I do, then that's great, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Personally, I don't subscribe to being part of a church, although I go I'm part of a community in a church. But that's alongside, you know, I go to Buddhist teachings. I'm organising a Buddhist retreat in August. So
And tell us about that. Where's that? Just so our
that's
viewers.
at Hope. It's going to be at Hope University.
When is that?
In Childwall, and it's in August. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can people can get in touch with me if they're interested in that.
And I think we're going to put up the website address afterwards, so
Yes.
people can
Great.
see that.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you've answered this question, I don't know, but in what you've said, but you might want to comment further. Over the last 30 years, we've seen a real decline in institutional religion. The Christian church, numbers attending the Christian church have fallen off dramatically. And at the same time, we've seen a kind of real growth in alternative spiritualities, as they've been called.
Yeah.
Why is that? Do you think more and more people are holding your kind of view? Or do you think this is to do with changes in society generally?
I think there are changes in society where people are looking for more, but I think also people, they see no reason to have something which is either a set of beliefs or a building or anything which enables them to get in touch with a spirituality that fits for them. People want it directly, you know, and people have discovered that they can do that, and they do it through all sorts of ways. So, you know, I don't know, people may have beliefs in other beings, in crystals, in sound. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it enables us to live on that level, and we don't need anything which helps us to do that, like going to a church or having someone tell us, or having someone tell us that we're forgiven. We don't need that. And I think people are discovering that. And people want that in their lives. That's been my experience of people who come in to make space, or people that I connect with, you know, in different spiritual arenas.
Okay, just a question for you. There are obviously people, we do things that are wrong. Would you agree with that? As human beings, that we make mistakes, that we offend people?
We make mistakes.
You know, on many different levels. So how do people, you know, you touched on forgiveness, the whole notion of forgiveness and mercy, which is obviously integral to the Christian belief system. How do people deal with their feelings of guilt and shame, and how do they get rid of those in your kind of understanding?
Again, it comes back to accepting and loving yourself. That enables you then to have compassion for yourself and to forgive yourself. And also,
so even if you've done something really, really terrible?
Yes, I think so. I mean, obviously that it takes something to trigger that for someone, but that can be almost anything, can't it? You know, people find their way in all sorts of different ways. I mean, I do a little bit of work with a charity who work with people recovering from alcohol and substance use, and they're not set up as any kind of a spiritual charity as such, and yet the people that I've met there are on a journey, there's no doubt.
So is that like a 12-step program?
Well, it's connected with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that originated in the church. Did you know that? The 12-step program.
Yeah.
And obviously they call on a higher power. Do you?
No, that's not what the charity is about.
No, okay.
Yeah.
What's your view on that? You believe in spirits? Do you believe in spirits, a big spirit or a range of spirits? You know,
I believe that there is a divine, but I believe it's within ourselves. You know, that is echoed within ourselves. I believe I am divine. I believe that you are divine.
Right, okay.
We all have that capacity. And that's another reason to be loving ourselves, because we are these amazing, wonderful beings. When we give ourselves a hard time and make judgments about ourselves and about others, you know, we're making a judgment about that divine person. Ultimately, underneath all of that, all of those layers, we are all wonderful and amazing beings. That's where I come from. One of my little catchphrases is, I'm flawed and fabulous.
Again, I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I like that. So what happens to us when we die physically? What happens?
I have
then?
no idea.
And it doesn't bother you?
Not at all. Sometimes I think, yeah, I've been here before and I'm obviously going to come back again. Other times I don't. I don't have a clear answer on that.
Okay. Now, you're involved a bit with St Bride's, which is a Christian church. How do you make that work, given what we've just been chatting about?
I'll enjoy the community at St Bride's. It's a lovely community of people. St Bride's have a catchphrase. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
They're what is it? Progressive, creative, and inclusive, and that's how I found that community. When I first went, I used to say, you know, is it okay because I'm not a Christian? And they'd be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they very much walk their talk. I recently went on a week's pilgrimage with St Bride's in Northumberland, which was wonderful, and I felt very blessed, but also very valued for what I brought as a, you know, just a different way in to spirituality. And we all sang and chanted together and meditated and prayed together, and you know, it works. Yeah.
So for people who don't know where St Bride's is, it's up in the Georgian Quarter, isn't it, in Liverpool?
Yeah.
And I can't remember the road.
Well, it's between Catherine Street and like Huskisson Street's on the corner.
And there's a big banner outside which says Progressive, Creative, Inclusive.
And inclusive, that's right. Yeah, and
and
they do loads of things. Really busy church.
And your group meets there?
Our group meets at St Michael's in the City, which is in Chinatown. We use that sometimes.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, we meet in different venues. We have a monthly reading group and a monthly Sunday gathering, which is at the Domino Gallery on Upper Newington.
Well, Jackie, it's just so good to have you in the studio today and to be sharing about Make Space. And I sense a lot of common ground, and I hope we meet again and chat some more. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And join us next time for Faith Matters.